So I want to kick off by saying, so let's go to the next slide, please. So for those of you who know us, you will realize that we have been the very few voices of optimism during this pandemic, and I'm happy to say that we are about 90% been correct about many of the things that we've said in April of 2020, and I'm actually very relieved. I have also been criticized for being overly optimistic, and to that I strongly disagree. We've always said that there's many difficulties and challenges this country and its people will go through while this pandemic is running. But I've always stressed that despite the pandemic, there are many good things that is tiding this country over. Things could be so much worse. And yes, so maybe I will go and start with the bad news. Okay, so not that you need any more bad news, but I'll just summarize it just to validate that, yes, I'm fully aware of all the bad news that's going around here. So, from being one of the worst hit of the pandemic to the contraction of 10% of the economy last year, and thankfully we are in the path of a recovery this year. Lots of jobs lost, lots of businesses closing. There's foreclosure rates climbing in both real estate and cars and other things. The POGO sector seems to be choked by a few people who refuse to open the door for the POGOs. And I have to keep stressing that in order to have a faster recovery for this country, we genuinely need the POGOs. Yes, there's a lot of mudslinging around that's decimating the good things that this administration is doing. And there's nothing more that we expect, or nothing less to expect from an election year coming up in 2020. Having said that, I have to stress that the property market has been holding on surprisingly well. Okay, and the office demand continues to grow, and we are continuing to be the envy of many countries. Many countries would do anything to be able to have the BPO sector. And we are one of the very few countries, one of two countries with this kind of BPO sector employing 1.3 million people and growing, continues to grow. And it has protected the office market. Despite what everybody says about work from home, tenants continue to pay rents. And while there's a lot of softening in certain areas, Bonifacio and Makati have held their ground. I think if you are a office owner outside of Bonifacio and outside of Makati, and you do not have PEZA in your property, then I think you're going to be hurting for quite some time until the POGOs return. And having said that, the BPOs continue to grow and take up space in an environment where PEZA is at one of the lowest it's ever been. This year, 2021 and 2022, the upcoming year, you will see PEZA space at its lowest it's ever been in a very long time. And that's why rents in PEZA buildings continue to do well. Not everywhere, but I would say predominantly throughout the country, rents in PEZA buildings have held their ground. And that's a very good thing. The lower end of the residential market has been decimated. And it's only now that you're starting to see a recovery. The middle market has been decimated, and it's only recently that you're seeing a recovery. But in the upper end, things are doing really well. Forbes Dasmo Urdaneta, where you have the most expensive properties in the Philippines, a typical house in Forbes or Urdaneta will cost 1 billion pesos. Well, okay, maybe the smaller cuts will go for 600 million, which is 1,000 square meters, 1,200 square meters, and they're very rare. But the typical lot cut in Urdaneta is about 1,800. The typical cut in Forbes is about 2,500, and those things are fetching about 1 billion pesos plus the house. And most of the time, if you buy a property today, you will build. You will have to tear down the existing house and build a totally new one, and that new project will cost you at least 200 million pesos before the man cave. And Ayala Alabang has gone up 40% throughout this crisis, 50%. And so average transactions are touching 180,000 pesos per square meter in Ayala Alabang. And because of that, as the rising tide lifts all boats, all the other villages in the Alabang area have also climbed throughout this crisis. And my favorite, Batangas Bay. So the geography between Punta Fuego, Hamilo, Tali Beach, Kawayan, and others have gone up anywhere between 100% to 300% in value. And transaction volumes we have never seen before. And Via has gone up about 100 to 200%, depending on which side of the ridge you are. And we have never seen transaction volumes the way we do now. And the transaction values went from 20 million pesos, 15 million pesos a piece to roughly about 100 million a piece. And that's just some of the things that's going on throughout the country. I'm very optimistic about the tourism market's recovery as soon as we're able to open up the airways, because so many people are promoting the Philippines much better than we are. And next. You might have heard me say that we are entering a phase of infrastructure that we have never seen before. And I've been saying this for the last 5 years. And today, those infrastructure projects are nearing completion. I used to say 15 months, now it's become 12, now it's become 9. So I guess in about 9 months, you're going to see many projects will be completed. So the Skyway 4 extension that you've all been driving through for the last few months will be fully completed in a month or two. You've got more bridges, more train lines coming online. You've got, by online meaning completed. And this geography that you see on this map comprises 40 million people. All these infrastructure projects are going to benefit 40 million people. So much so that when we go out of our houses, when we are finally released from our houses, we will enter a new Philippines, because we will be driving through new roads that we have never seen before. And for the last 2 years that we've been stuck with mobility constricted, we had no idea at the pace of construction of these construction sites. And it's going to be magic. And the most important thing about these infrastructure projects and the 40 million people that's benefiting from it is that these 40 million drive 60% to 70% of this GDP of the Philippines. Okay? And so as soon as the economy really truly opens, you're going to see a massive recovery driven partly by this infrastructure existing. And it will be open. A lot of these projects will be open by the time we get out of the house. And when are we going to be out of the house? If the government is true to its word, then I think the target is to vaccinate about 70% of the population within this year. So 20 million this month, next month, November, December. And then the balance in the first half of next year. And I've just come from New York. I can tell you, the world is so different when you have a meaningful part of your population vaccinated. And the priority is to vaccinate as much of Manila because that is the engine of the Philippines economic, the Philippine economic engine. And as soon as we are meaningfully vaccinated, they will open more and more and more of the economy, and you're going to see a rapid recovery. To those of you who run restaurants, I say that if you just have to brace yourself for another 2 months of hardship, because we will see cases continue to climb, but also we will see a lot of people getting vaccinated. And I think by November, December, the economies, the restaurants will start to be opening up again. And by that time, whoever is still standing in November will have a heyday because half the competition, 2/3 of the competition's been wiped out, and people will be lining up for restaurant space. Okay, and they will want to be consuming. They're tired of the food at home. They're tired of delivery because delivering food is not the same as eating it fresh from the kitchen. And I think many restaurants will do really well towards the year end. Next slide. It's not just Luzon, but Cebu, 10% of the GDP and the second largest economy in the Philippines, is also about to receive some of the biggest infrastructure projects it's ever seen. They're about to finish their 3rd bridge, and they are about to start a 4th bridge that is going to connect Mactan to the mainland Cebu. They're about to build their railway. They're building new roads that they've never had built before. It's been a long while before you've seen a new road built in Cebu, and they've got quite a healthy pipeline. And most of these projects will be completed within the next 4 to 6 years. Next. And why am I so optimistic about tourism? Because things are going to meaningfully change. Just imagine if you're from North Asia, so Taiwan, China, Japan, Korea, your experience of flying into the Philippines is really horrible because you're going to have to fly into Naiya and it's normally delayed. And then it's a hell of a journey to get your bag and out of immigration. And then it's a hell of a journey to get your cab or to be picked up. And then just when you're in your car, you're going to bear through quite a bit of traffic. That's all going to change because if you're coming from North Asia, you can fly into Clark, and Clark Airport is going to open this month or next month. And it's just going to change the way you view Philippine travel and entering the country, because your flight will leave from its destination on time. It will land on time. You won't spend an hour getting your bags and going through immigration, and there won't be any traffic. And you will be driving through some of the best roads this country has to offer. If you go to NLEX, if you go to TPLEX, if you want to go to La Union, if you want to go to Ilocos, you're going to be driving through some of the most beautiful, beautiful roads. And the scenery is awesome. If you want to go to Baguio, the same thing. And I believe that Clark will connect with Cebu and the rest of the gorgeous resort offerings we have in the Visayas. So you can go from Clark to Cebu, or Cebu to or Clark to Boracay, Clark to Palawan, any of the 4 airports in Palawan, by the way, because Palawan will very soon be the most connected geography in the Philippines with 4 airports. No other landmass has got this much airports in the country. And we've got a very healthy pipeline of new airports that's going to be built. And don't forget that we have built about 10 airports in the last 10 years. Clark is not just the only airport that we are going to complete. Mactan Airport is not the only one. We've got a beautiful airport in Puerto Princesa, a beautiful airport in Tagbilaran, Bohol. We've got a beautiful airport, Panglao, rather. And Iloilo, it's got a beautiful airport. Davao is going to upgrade their airport and expand. And so it's just going to change the way people travel. If you are from South Asia, so if you're from Singapore or Indonesia or Thailand, again, you don't need to go to Naiya. You will just go straight to Cebu. And from Cebu, you will just travel throughout the Visayas. Next. The BPO industry and office take-up has been climbing since the trough of second quarter 2020. This yellow line shows you how much the demand has been picking up for the office sector. And you can see that we are rapidly approaching pre-COVID levels. While we're still far away from pre-COVID levels 2019, we can say that for the last 5 quarters, that's been a very clear sign of a recovery. And to the point where the third quarter numbers have just come out, and we're going to submit a press briefing in about a week and a half, in less than 10 days. And we are about 90% of office transaction volume compared to 2020 numbers. And so I think we will meaningfully breach the numbers that we did in 2020. We've done about 281,000 square meters of new leases in 2020. In 2021, first 3 quarters, that number is about 374,000 square meters. My guess, we will do somewhere in the region of 450 to 500,000 square meters. If we do that, that will be one of the largest office markets in the world during COVID. And that will probably put us in the top 3 or 4 markets in the world. Next. And again, the BPO sector continues to take space. Now, this slide shows you the residential market. The orange line shows you capital values. And look at how capital values have behaved. They've been fairly flat. At a time in 2020 when the economy contracted 10%. And even throughout the third quarter, most buildings have held their value. And I have to stress that I am fully aware of certain properties that are being sold at a significant discount. I'm not saying that there aren't any discounts, but you have to consider the information we're giving here to you is across 500 plus buildings, across 100 developers. 100 developers, and about how many thousand units are these? Something like 250, 300,000 units of condominium space. Look at the rents. So capital values have behaved really, really well, despite a contraction in the economy and despite a massive contraction in rents. So we've given 6 different business districts, 6 different townships, and how property values have behaved in both the capital values and rental values. And you can see that BGC has held their ground, Makati's held their ground predominantly. The rest of the gig has been hit, but it's on a path of recovery. Where properties are really hit hard is in the rental market, in Ortigas, in the Bay Area, and and in some portions of Alabang. And that's primarily because of the exodus of the POGO sector. By now, they would have given about half. So they're still here. They haven't totally left, but they have given up probably about 50% of all the space they occupy. So how much space does the POGO sector occupy pre-COVID? About 1.7 million square meters throughout the country. They've given up about half that. And they have also given up an equivalent number of residential property. Okay? They don't want to leave. They like the Philippines. But for some reason, we don't like them. And we really have to find a middle ground, because without the POGOs, the economic recovery will happen at a much slower pace. Next. Why is all this possible? How is all this possible? Yes, the administration is far from perfect. There are those for the administration or those against the administration. What I have to say is that despite everything that you might say against it and what unpalatable things this administration might have done, we really have to thank the Department of Finance and the team under Secretary Dominguez. We have to thank Secretary Dominguez and his entire economic team because we genuinely owe them a lot. When I was in New York, many of the foreigners, many of the New Yorkers asked me, so despite everything that we hear about the Philippines, about President Duterte, what has this administration done? What are the most important things this administration has done? Well, a lot of those things have happened under the watch of Secretary Dominguez. First of all, those infrastructure projects would not have been possible without the fiscal management and interest rate balancing that this administration has done. Number two, the absolute veracity to protect the right of way of many of these infrastructure projects. Without that strong hand of protecting the right of way, many of these projects will be giving way and succumbing to the efforts of many crazy people who will just block these projects to extort more money from these projects. Okay, none of that has happened in this administration. In fact, this administration has facilitated and fast-tracked both the projects that were started in the Pinoy administration as well as the ones started here in this administration. Number two, the Philippines is one of only 10 countries in the world that received a credit rating upgrade in the heart of the pandemic of 2020. Many people fail to appreciate that. But because of these credit ratings upgrades, interest rates continue to fall in the Philippines. Okay. Number three, the reit law. A lot of people, again, take for granted the reit law. And the reit law has been a tremendous success for many people. Okay. 10 years delayed, and today, at the heart of the pandemic, these REIT companies are able to generate and put assets into the REIT at 5% cap rates. Okay, unheard of for a country like the Philippines. It is unheard of. Okay, and the fourth, and I'll talk more about that later, but the fourth, I guess one other important achievement of this administration is tax reform. Okay, before this administration, as you know, anybody earning 50,000 pesos a month and above was paying 30 to 32% income tax. And today, the only people who pay income tax at those levels are people earning 8 million pesos or more. In fact, the tax rate for people like Randall over here earning more than 8 million pesos a year has gone up to about 35%. And that is tax reform that nobody had the courage to do. People cannot appreciate basically the handouts, the free money handed out to so many people, millions of employed people throughout the country. People cannot appreciate that. And second, corporate income tax is one of the Philippines is one of the highest in Asia Pacific. Okay, and from 32%, it's down to about 25%, heading towards 20% in the next 3 to 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't take these things for granted. These are significant milestone achievements that will have repercussions for generations of Filipinos. It has made so much improvement to so many. We just can't appreciate it enough. We have to appreciate it enough. And I think lastly, despite the pandemic, the Philippines, because of its credit rating, was able to borrow significant amounts of money. You know, the biggest criticism of the GMA and Pinoy administration was that the government did not borrow enough. In fact, they hardly borrowed at all. And today, at the height of the COVID crisis, the government was needed to borrow more money and plow it into this economy. That's pump priming right there. It's not going to infrastructure, although a big chunk of it will go to infrastructure. But right now, it's going to the people who need it, which are the unemployed. Yes, the ayuda is not perfect. The ayuda system is not perfect. It's total chaos, to quote some people. Not, you know, but overall, we're able to do this because the Philippines was in a good position to borrow money. Next. The REITs. There have been a number of very successful REIT. I'm very happy to say that Robinson's Land, what is it now? A week into listing, and the stock price has held its ground. It is the most successful REIT in the Philippines today, not only because of the scale, because it is the largest one in the market. It has raised the most it's raised the most capital from the market. It has the most diverse geography and footprint. But because they've been able to protect the stock price despite everything, despite a massive contraction in the stock market in the last few days, despite what happened in China with Evergrande. Especially if you compare that to when Ayala REIT listed, the stock price came down by about 10-15%. Double Dragon is down, I don't know how many percent now, I think 20. So Robinson's REIT has done extremely well. And I'm very excited about the upcoming REIT, the other giant that's coming online, which is the Megaworld REIT. I think the Megaworld REIT will do really well because, again, just like Robinson's, it's the second largest REIT offering in the Philippines. Again, diverse footprint, quality tenants, quality assets. And then you've got a number of companies also coming online. You've got Visa, you've got Jollibee and Double Dragon, and then you've got Citicorp, and a handful also in the wings that have not announced yet, but will be launching their REITs, and it's just around the corner. Guys, this won't be possible. The success of these REITs won't be possible if not for the health of the economy. Yes, it is badly damaged, but there's a very big chunk of the economy that is doing really well. And all of us are benefiting from it, whether you admit it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. And even with 12 REITs in full bloom by next year, that's still nothing compared to Thailand, Singapore, Japan, and Malaysia. There's so many REITs that can still enter the market. Okay, and that is one of the best protections you have in this economy. If you're looking for an asset class to invest in and property is just too rigid and too slow, I would really encourage you to go and look at the REITs. Next. Why is tourism going to be good? Why is tourism going to be why is it going to be doing well? And in fact, I say tourism is going to be the largest industry of the Philippines within 10 years. It will be larger than the BPO sector, larger than remittances. Today, it is a measly $8 billion. Compare that to Thailand's $40 billion pre-pandemic. The Philippines is one of the least visited countries in the world. It is one of the most closed, most difficult countries to access. But because of all these new airports coming online, that's going to change. And what's complementing this infrastructure boom are all these influencers. And we are just presenting 10. There's easily 20, 50, 100 people all promoting the Philippines. And one thing they have in common is they're foreigners. They didn't grow up here. They visited, they They fell in love with the geography, fell in love with the people, probably had a girlfriend or boyfriend or two, and they just love the experience, and they're sharing that experience with so many people in the world. Look at these people. They've got like millions of followers in IG, in Facebook, in TikTok and all that. And all for what? To promote the Philippines and how well this country offers people. And as soon as the airports open, you're going to see a massive influx of foreigners from all sorts. It's not just white people promoting it. It's Singaporeans, it's Japanese people, Chinese people, Thai people, all loving the Philippines. In fact, sometimes based on their posts, parang they love the Philippines more. They observe the laws unlike us. They pay their taxes unlike us. And they clean up after us, unlike most people in the Philippines. Okay, they're very environmental conscious, and they're providing a lot of their world experience to the thought leaders in government and the society to make things better for Philippines. Imagine that. Next. We've exhausted 50 townships all throughout Metro Manila. That could not have been possible. And we did that in such a short span of time, 15 years. That could not have been possible if not for the strength and veracity of the economy. Next. It's not just Metro Manila. Robinsons and Megworld continue to launch new projects throughout the country. Ayala continues to launch new townships throughout the country. There's 122 townships launched as of today. All of this transforming the entire country to making it closer to the first world. What do I mean by that? Sidewalks, you take for granted if you live in Manila, if you live in Makati or Bonifacio, or Ortigas Center or Philinvest Alabang, but how many towns have usable sidewalks? How many of them are lighted at night? How many of them have lighted streets at night? All throughout the country, that's changing. And that's transforming the mindset of so many people. Next. My last slide being, we've been through a lot. So this is the history of the Philippines in the last 20 years, measured by cement consumption, overseas remittances, BPO employment, stock market performance, and what is that? GDP per capita income. Okay, and you can see for the last and tourism arrivals, and you can see for the last 20 years, they have been going one direction only, and that's up. It's only the last 18 months that you've seen a couple only of these metrics come down, tourism and cement consumption. But as soon as the economy opens, which I think will happen by the end of the year when a meaningful part of the population is vaccinated, you're going to see a recovery to continue this thing for the next 20 years. And if you think I'm overly optimistic, please remember the text that you see there in the upper half of the screen that you can't read right now because the text is too small, is every calamity that's hit the Philippines, from every coup d'etat to landslide to killer typhoons, dengue, kidnappings, terrorist activity, etc. And we continue to do well as a country. We continue to grow despite all these challenges. And so the pandemic kind of tripped the economy. I look at it this way, okay? This pandemic has slowed down the upward movement of property values, okay? So instead of it growing, instead of property values climbing 5, 7, 10% a year, which is what most properties have done, it has either kept it flat for the most case. And if stayed flat or even come down, then I suggest you look at this as an opportunity to come in and buy cheap assets. And if you don't like property, well, go to the stock market. The stock markets come down from what was it pre-pandemic? 8,000 to 4 or 5 in March of 2020. Did you guys buy? Did you listen to Randall? And today, it's only touching 6.8. It's still discounted. Look at MegaWorld at a single-digit PE. Look at Robinsons at 15.50, 15.48. I can keep going on and on. Look at this as an opportunity to come in meaningfully when prices are low. Yes, your downside might be, there will be a downside in certain months, certain days of the market, whether you're investing in property or stocks. But I can tell you that the upside will be so much better than what your perception is of your downside. With that, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Oh, thank you, David. No, so again, let me add you in, and all right. So, Dave, you okay? David, again, thank you. No, you okay for some questions here?
Sure.
And yes, the upside's very good. In fact, at a recent meeting, no, we're really looking at 888, 8.5 sooner than later. So it's an opportunity for you to take a look at. Or if you don't like stocks but you like property, there's always REITs. No, plugging lang. I did a little bit of an infographic, no, on the RCR why I like it, and buti naman tama yung aking mga sinabi doon. Anyway, so David, the biggest questions happening right now: how is the Evergrande gonna have an impact on the property industry globally and of course in the Philippines? I was reading that they're 2% of China's GDP. That's how big they are.
Well, look at it this way. China has the same problem as the Philippines, which is a big chunk of the wealth is unrecorded. Whether they admit that or not, I think we know that as a fact, right? The entire Western markets look at China with a bit of insecurity with the numbers. And a big chunk of the wealth is unrecorded. Number two, it will certainly create havoc in the stock markets, including the Philippines. But I think we have to remember one thing, okay? Chinese mainland people are probably the second biggest investor in the world, okay? The big question we have is how much of those people have invested in the Philippines? Very little. Okay, if you look at the barometer, which is tourism, how many Chinese traveled in 2019? The answer is 150 million people from China traveled. Out of that 150 million, the largest tourism market in the world. Okay, why do you think is Louis Vuitton stock up and those other luxury brands up through the pandemic? It's because of China and Chinese people buying. How many people from China went to the Philippines? 1 million people, 1.2 million people, and we don't want them back. We make it so hard for them. Number two, so out of that 1.2 million people that actually came here, how many of them invested in the Philippines? Very little. So frankly, I don't think that is an issue for Philippine property. Philippine stock market might get hit for a few days, a few weeks, I don't know, depending on how bad it is, until the market realizes that China has nothing to do with the Philippines. I mean, really, what are we trading with China? Okay, China is maybe the 5th, the 6th, the 7th trading partner of the Philippines, but nothing. Very small numbers. And so in the real economy, actually outside of the POGO sector, they're not a player in anything. Okay, they have NGCP, but what do they really do? They're nothing. Okay, they're funding infrastructure projects, but they have yet to actually fund a project. Despite all these press releases and talk that they're going to fund projects, they haven't. The Japanese have always beat them to it.
Yeah. Right. So again, the movement's going to be tough. We're going to experience that also in the capital markets, but I agree it's temporary. It's something's going to happen, and it's kind of nice that we're going to be a little bit maybe insulated. So David, people are asking in the chat, no? So in that case happening, and they're noticing that pre-selling condos are still rising in prices. Is this just artificial or is it just a marketing ploy? What's going on with that?
You have to look at two things, okay? Let's look at Shangri-La at the BGC, the most expensive condominium project in the Philippines. To buy a unit there will cost you 650,000, 700,000 pesos per square meter. And these are not small units. The smallest unit is 250 square meters. So you can just imagine how many millions is that. I can't do the math right now, but 600 to 700,000 pesos per square meter cash. Okay, and then you compare that to something like the estates. The estates is this SM Federal Land joint venture, GTCAP joint venture, where they are offering units for sale at 600,000 to 650,000 pesos per square. Per square meter. But the big difference is you're paying that over a period of 5 years to 7 years. So that 600,000, 650,000 per square meter is not the same as 650,000 pesos per square meter in the Shan paid today. So, and many of the developers like Alveo and SM and Mega World have really been generous, have really extended payment terms. And you know what? Just go, I wouldn't say go recklessly investing, but I think you have to look at this as a buy opportunity because it's only during crises that developers are put in a situation of flexibility.
Okay. So they may not have brought down their prices, but they've been more liberal in their opportunity there. I think a few nice spots for you to take a look at. Somebody claims that your income is unreported. The one who claims is Rina Leechiu Chua. So I don't know. I don't know how true. No. Okay. So
my claim to fame is that recently I was number 100 taxpayer in the country.
Wow. Okay.
Now that doesn't give me any joy whatsoever. What that made me realize is that holy shit, so many people are not paying their taxes. I pay my taxes. I am very proud to say that. And I encourage all of you to pay your taxes.
Okay, so that answers Rina joke. That's as a joke, no? That's the sister messaging. Baka hindi ka daw nagbo-blow out, David, no? So, okay. So, that's a question, no? I think the guy who asked the question about why it's not going out is actually from a developer. Anyway, so what do you think in the next administration, what should they prioritize? As we end this one and, we're going to get a new one, what do they think that should be their priority also? To continue or to do something else?
So I would say 4 things. Just 4 things. Number 1, open up this bloody country to foreign investment. Okay, 40% cap, bring it up to 50%. Or allow foreigners to lease land up to 100 years, just like most cases, right? Number 2, continue with infrastructure building. Not spending, not necessarily just spending, but building. Number 3, the rule of law. The rule of law. There's so many laws and nobody obeys them. Just look at tax efficiency. Do you know what the tax efficiency is of this country? It is about 18%. What does that mean? It means that the Philippines is only collecting 18% of the taxes it should be. And you know what? Before the POGOs, that number was 12%. Okay? The POGOs are, okay, some are accusing them of tax evasion. Frankly, before we call out the others, we should all look at ourselves. That's the big problem. And the 4th thing is property rights. You don't know how many properties outside, in Manila and throughout the country where you're only owning land based on tax deck, on whatever, all these imperfect structures. And so many properties are untitled for one reason or the other. And we have to prioritize. So just those 4 things, if we fix those 4 things, we will be able to fix many things.
Okay. So here's a question. What is your take on the idea of NFTs being tied to property titles as a complementary proof of ownership? Do you think developers will adopt this program soon? Something that's new?
Well, to quote Warren Buffett, only invest in things that you understand and don't invest in things you don't understand.
Okay.
You know, blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto, NFTs, art.
It's a niche. So anyway, so guys, we're gonna teach you about these things also, not because we're endorsing it, it's because as a financial advisor, you have to be knowledgeable about these things. So okay, any idea when the tourism industry is gonna be a rebound? Is it next year?
As soon as we open the airways, and that's only gonna happen when we meaningfully vaccinate. You know, back in April, we said, April 2020, okay, when everyone's in panic, we said, hey, the vaccines are going to be out in October. And true enough, right? And hey, the vaccines that have been discovered are going to be onshore in the Philippines by February. And you know what? We had every chance to make that happen. But for some reason, you know what happened? And so now 6 months delayed yung vaccines, and therefore we're going through this hell. But had we gotten the vaccines as early as February of 2021, that would have changed the entire economic spectrum of the Philippines.
All right. So again, bright spots for the country, because you know a lot of these guys are from different parts. You were very bullish with Clark a few years ago. Is it still the same narrative?
I still am.
Yeah. So Clark, it's going to be more. Do you think Clark is going to be ahead of the other townships?
It will be. It will be. The population base is there. The access to international traffic is there. Clark is the gateway for Northern Luzon tourism. And what is that? North Luzon tourism is like my comparison to the Gold Coast. You know Boracay's beach is only 25 meters, right? Low tide in most cases, right? That's why the president had to do what he had to do with Boracay. They had to clear out all these occupiers in the beach. So now it's back at 25 meters. But do you know the average coastline for the entire Northern Luzon is 50 to 60 meters of beach? And that coastline runs hundreds of kilometers around Northern Luzon from Poro Point, from La Union, or Bataan, all the way to the other side to Aurora and what else is south of Aurora. Anyway, that whole thing is hundreds of kilometers long. It's gorgeous, gorgeous.
How about in the Visayas? What would be the equivalent for the Visayas area? I know there's development in Mactan. There's also in Iloilo.
Palawan will be our answer to Bali and Phuket.
Okay.
And I said it before, no other island, no other geography in the Philippines is as connected as Palawan with 4 operating airports. And what's the population of Palawan? Less than 1 million people. What's that? And the beauty, despite ourselves, the beauty of Palawan, amazing. And I think that whole strip from Palawan to Bohol, Cebu, Boracay, Iloilo, gorgeous.
Okay, so there's a question for you. Palawan is best, of course. It's beautiful. There's a lot of areas that you can see that's growing. So, okay. 2 to 3 months, the Cordova, Mactan Island to Cebu Bridge will be open. Okay, so again, I was cut there with naipit ako ng traffic, unbelievable, no? Okay, Leo, is that the Ayala developments in Palawan? It's just going to be a start. It's going to be more happening right now. Antoinette's asking now, what are your top 5 condominiums in the primary market for rental or end use?
I am very biased towards the condos in Bonifacio because I think Bonifacio is the best place to live in. You know, I'm sorry to those who disagree, but I think property values will reflect that. You know, But I think the Ayala Premier project, Park Central Towers, is very promising. Very, very, very promising. And then the estates is also very, very promising.
How about the newer ones that's happening? Because we can't afford Bonifacio, you can now go to what's that place in Ayala? I'm forgetting the FTI. What's that?
Arca South.
Arca South. How about the Arca South? Is that an alternative if you wanna buy something that's cheaper?
I guess so. Yeah, definitely. Arca South is promising because look, outside of Taguig is one of the biggest land masses in Metro Manila. How many townships does Taguig have? Well, there's McKinley Hill, there's McKinley West, there's Uptown, all Mag World projects, and they're all doing extremely well. You've got Verytown of federal land, you've got BGC. They're all clustered together. And then on the other side of C5 is Acacia Estates, DMCI territory, and then the Villars also have that. But the biggest township outside of this Bonifacio cluster that I mentioned, the biggest township is Arca South. So that is very promising. It will be, the people who are living further south can move closer north to Arca South to be closer to jobs, to be closer to schools.
Okay. The one asking is from Ayala Land. That's why I posted it. Anyway, so how about... Okay. How about QC? Is there still growth in the QC area?
QC is the biggest landmass in Metro Manila. It is the biggest home of the middle class. It has a lot of land, but it is disputed. And so I think if there's one thing that the local government can do there, it is to fix all that land, get it titled, manage the squatters. I'm not saying just unilaterally kick them out, but they're people. So we have to, I guess, do it in a way that is humane, where they have alternatives. That's not like 200 kilometers away, their replacement housing. But QC has so much potential. It's a gateway to the north, and QC is going to integrate with Clark, and it's going to bypass everything in the middle.
All right. So good. So I'm invested in QC anyway. So will Makati make a comeback? Renewed gentrification?
The next 15 years, Makati is making a comeback now.
Yeah.
Because what many people don't realize is there will be easily 30 buildings that will be torn down and resurrected in the next 10 years. And that's going to release 1.5 million square meters of new space. And within those 10 years, you're going to complete more roads connecting Makati to the rest of the city. You're going to have train lines, the Makati subway train, and then you've got the JICA train that will connect Makati to so many. I guess we will never have enough infrastructure, but there will be a whole lot more infrastructure today, 10 years from now, to accommodate all that density.
Okay. So David, with all this hype on work from home, I mean, some companies are saying it's here to stay. It's going to be a hybrid. Wouldn't this have an impact on commercial properties?
I think not. I think that work from home is our graduated process back to the office. Okay. Number one, I think a lot of people are just really tired and burned out at home. Number two, people are just not getting along anymore. And you've heard me say many times the COVID hookups and the COVID breakups. They're really, as much as I joke about it, there really is a big problem about people breaking up during this COVID, because they realize they can't stand each other. They used to just live with each other for like 8 hours max a day, and now you're 24/7. That's like, not for all couples, maybe some couples. And also there are couples that, maybe for one reason or the other, maybe they're bored, they kind of hook up. Maybe they shouldn't have hooked up, but they're hooking up. And that will change when things open. And I think as much as we say the technology and all that is going to be different, I think we just have to look back 100 years ago, exactly 100 years ago, when the Spanish flu pandemic hit the world and killed, by the way, 100 million people. That makes COVID look like a pussycat compared to the Spanish flu. And did people change behavior? No, they didn't. They went back as soon as it was gone. And I think look at it today. Today, September 2021, and 5 companies are this close to finding a cure to COVID, which they are very optimistic to release to the market by November or December. That's going to change. Never mind the vaccines, it's too heavy, too difficult to manage. You have COVID, you take pills, you're done. Tapos.
Okay. How about Philinvest Alabang? Naiwan na ba? Or what's happening
I
there?
have always promoted Philinvest Alabang. Always, always, always. In fact, it's the cheapest market to buy, even today at 400,000 per square meter. And nobody has sold more land in Philinvest Alabang as we have. Okay, we've sold gazillions, billions worth of property there recently, and more pa. We're going to be tripling, quadrupling up in terms of sales volume in Philinvest. I think it is the most underappreciated property, the entire Alabang. So Ayala Alabang and Philinvest Alabang are probably the most underappreciated properties in the Philippines.
So there's growth areas with what's happening right now. Right. So how about yung lower priced, mid-priced condos that mushroomed all over Metro Manila? What do you see is going to happen to them? A lot of people bought it because they want to be closer to work, and or maybe they bought it because they wanted to lease it to Pogo. What happens to those smaller developments? Well, not small, but cheaper.
Without the
cheaper.
Pogos, the rents will just keep falling.
Okay.
Now the question is, are the unit owners willing to sell at a discount or not? Well, I think they're going to keep holding as long as they can. Because, as much as you and I try to encourage people to invest in the stock market, right? The reality is very few invest in the stock market, right? Out of 100 million, out of a middle class of I don't know, 10 million people, right? How many are really investing in the stock market? Less than 2 million people. Real people, because some of these people like you probably have like 20 accounts, So sorry, 30. So
fake news. Okay.
They like real estate because of the simplicity, right? And they will keep investing in real estate, and they will be happy. You know what? The REITs are offering 5% tax-free. Many condos are offering 5 to 8% pre-tax. Huge difference.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, take a look at good news. G-Invest is close to 2 million subscribers unique, by the way. So there's still hope. There's still hope that's going to happen. Again, REIT is a great opportunity for a lot of people. 5.97 for the RCR if you bought it at IPO, which I believe it's pretty good. I was talking to somebody na, small condos, kinumpute niya parang 6% lang yung return niya over the last 10 years. Sakit ulo pa and everything. And if I put in the months that I couldn't rent it out, it's probably even lesser. So but the average capital appreciation of condominiums has been anywhere from a low of 6 to, in some cases, 14% per annum for the last 15 years. Okay.
So I wouldn't say shift everything back to REITs and all that. I think just like anything, you gotta have a balanced portfolio.
Okay. So low-cost housing, what's the update on that? I know this is out of your area.
The low-cost housing we covered low-cost housing. We sell a lot of land to low-cost housing developers, and when funding goes back to the lower end, then that will start coming back. This is how we look at it, right? More and more people are going from no college degree to a college degree. They can finally afford college. More people are going from 1 meal a day to 3 meals a day. That's the reality. Okay, this whole statement about the poor are getting poor is bullshit. Really, right? More and more people are going to afford homes. That's the reality. And everyone is in that wagon. Everyone is on that train, even the poor.
Okay, so you can continue investing in Pag-ibig MP2. So dire-diretso pa rin siya, no? Good returns, by the way. All right, David. Final words from you. I know we don't want to hold you again. Thank you so much for. And just gonna announce, no. Finally, no, you guys have social media accounts. So I'm sure you have nothing to do with that, no. But they cannot be found even in Instagram. So Instagram, Facebook. There's the Leechiu Properties. You can check them. They do have a lot of updates there. So kudos to your very young team. Okay, so and even YouTube, no. So grabe, no. So you guys have welcome to the digital world. Okay, for that. Some final words from you. Final words from you, David.
So I started, many months ago. I started quoting Jack Ma, and I think I'm going to say the same thing. He was very famous for saying these words that today is bad and tomorrow is going to be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine. It will be beautiful. And I think, please, times are hard, but this is when a lot of opportunities are coming. And yes, the biggest frustration of many buyers is that property prices have not come down enough, if at all. And frankly, look at it the other way, which is this crisis has slowed down the appreciation of property prices, and you should take advantage of that if you can. I'm not saying go borrow to the hilt. In fact, I always caution people from borrowing money, because as Warren Buffett said, nothing takes your assets away from you as debt. And so be cautious when you borrow money, but you can't look at this bleak with bleak eyes. You've got to look at this with the wide eyes of opportunity.
Right. Thank you, David. The Facebook pages of Leechiu has been uploaded by your sisters. Okay, your two sisters have been your greatest fans. They've been uploading.
Thank you.
And they
Thank
said,
you.
wala pa din si Aya. Okay, anyway. So, okay. So David still likes text. Anyway, thank you, David. Again, this is going to be another great session for all of you. This is the start. Thank you, David, for helping me launch this special program for the graduates of the masterclass. Let me invite you again. There's going to be a level up program. It's going to be with Rex Mendoza, Philip Hagedorn, Marvin Guillermo, Alvin Ang, Jason Law, and myself. So take advantage of the special rate that I'm offering. A lot of you actually signed up tonight. So we still have a few, maybe 20 slots left for the special rate. Do that. And then do sign up for the Viber so you can be updated. With this, thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. God bless everyone. Bye, guys.